Okay, I want to say good morning to say hello to everybody. I have a couple of things that I want to tell you. One of the things that I want to talk to you about is my newest book, Chopping My Row. It is fantastic. Let me hold it up here so that you can see it. Chopping My Row is a fantastic book. It is it's proving to be a blessing to me. It's proving to a blessing to all of the people that I know. This is a fantastic book, and I tell you what, a couple of things that I've gone to, a couple of book events. This book has been referred to as that book. And when your book gets to be known as that book, you know that you're somewhere in the ballpark of producing a pretty good book. This book is a blessing. It was a blessing for me to write, and I certainly think it will be a blessing for you. It's a 13-lesson book, and it's done for ladies, but I've had people from all walks of life, not just ladies, both genders have gotten something good out of the book and said really great things about it. They use it for various things. So I think it will be a blessing to you. One of the things that I talk about in the book, in the second lesson, it talks about storms, and that's something that all of us have to go through at some point or another in life. And storms affect us like nothing else in the world. And I might as well tell you this while we're going over this. You're in a relationship with storms. One of three things, and I've heard preachers say this, one of three positions, and I've heard preachers say this many times. Didn't think I'd ever be using it myself, but they said you were either in the middle of a storm, you just got out of one, or you're just getting ready to go into one. So it behooves us to be prepared for storms and then learn some things about storms. And so because storms affect us more than anything else in our Christian lives, I did give an entire lesson to storms and some of the benefits from that you can gain from having gone through a storm, since we're going to have to go through them. And we're told that, I think it's in 1 Peter chapter 2, but anyway, 1 Peter, and it says, "Beloved, think it not strange as though some fiery trial does beset you." In other words, Christ went through things. You're trying to be Christ-like. You're going through some things too. You've been told beforehand that these things are going to happen. And so I have some things in this book that will help you through storms. But the lesson that I'm going to do today, I did want to talk to you a little bit about. I did a ladies class last Saturday, and their theme was Young and in Charge in 2017. And I got to thinking about that. And I thought, young people don't realize. When you're young, there are some things that you don't realize until you become older. And then there are some of us, we realize our responsibility, but we don't take it as, take it to heart as much as we should. And then life is moving on faster than we think it is. Because I remember when I used to hear people say, the old folks say this, the old folks say that, and then I realized, hey, wait a minute, I'm one of them now. Those that I knew as the old folk, they're gone on. And then I realized, I'm at a different phase of my life. And I've looked back through the different phases of my life, tried to see in each phase, what have I done for the Lord? And I've been blessed in that I've always had an intimate relationship with Him. And so I guess somebody said, well, the old folk are trying to get into heaven now. But that's not the thing. You do the best that you can in whatever phase of life you are in. And that's certainly what I'm trying to do. And having said that, this is something that I live my life by right here. This phrase here, if the Lord, that's something that has carried me. It carried me when I was a little girl. So young people, young ladies, it carried me when I was a little girl. And we'll talk about prayer in a little bit, but I've heard people say and ask the question, does the Lord hear young people pray? And I'm here to tell you, yes, He does. Because I was young and He heard me, and now I'm an elderly person and He still hears me. So yes, He does. So if you're young and you're having problems with somebody at school, there's a bully that won't leave you alone, and you can't get anyone to listen to you, don't think that if the situation is hopeless and you can't do anything about it. Yes, you can too. You have a Father. You tell Jesus. And I'm telling you, as a lady who used to be young just like you, and He helped me then, and He's still helping me now. So whatever you do, don't you ever feel like that it's hopeless and nobody listens. Jesus listens. Hebrew chapter 4 verse 16 says, come before my throne. Come boldly before my throne. That means whatever problems you have, bring it to him. And I have that in this book called Chopping My Row. And I want to tell you a little bit about Chopping My Row. When I was a little girl, I had to go to the cotton field. Let me get up close so you can look at it again. I had to go to the cotton field. I didn't like chopping cotton then, and I don't like it now. And I prayed some very earnest prayers and sincere prayers in that cotton field, asking the Lord to get me out of the cotton field, make it so that I could do great in my studies so that I wouldn't have to stay in the cotton field. And you see, I prayed that in yesterday of my youth, and now I am living the tomorrow. That is the result of the prayers I prayed yesterday as a youth. So yes, God does answer prayers. I want to tell you a little story. I've always been very curious. And so back when I was 7 years old, and this is why I go back to if the Lord. Now you remember that I had this in my mind, right? Back when I was 7 years old, we had just had a lesson in my class, and back when I was 7 years old, 7-year-olds were really 7-year-olds. There's nothing, we didn't have all of the technological gadgets that we have now. And so you learn what you learned mostly from a book. And so we were really fascinated when our teacher had this dry cell battery. And then she had this cable thing. And then she had a little bulb. She had this wire, it was a wrapped wire, and she connected the battery to this end, and then on this end she took this little bulb and stuck it to there. And we were talking about circuits, and she said, this made a circuit. And I thought, oh, so it impressed me. We all went, oh, when the bulb lit up, because we couldn't see any visible sign of electricity except that dry cell battery. But it made an impression on me. So, I guess maybe a week later or so, I was at my aunt's house, and I was waiting for my favorite cousin to come outside and to finish eating so we could go outside to play. That's what 7-year-olds do back then. And so I had my hand in my pocket, and I had a safety pin in my pocket. And I was just opening and closing the safety pin, just looking at it, opening and closing it. And then I turned around and I looked at the wall, and they had just put a new electrical receptacle, and it was running along the wall. And it looked like a silver pipe. You know those pipes where they do receptacles now so that children can't get to them. So it was enclosed in a silver pipe. And it was just about as high as eye level for a little 7-year-old. And I looked at that, and it came out to a socket. And I thought, that's a circuit. That's a circuit. And I remember thinking, I wonder, and I had this pen opening and closing it in my hand. And I remember thinking, I wonder, would this pen be part of the circuit too? I thought, I wonder what would happen if yes, you guessed it. If you guessed, no, you didn't. Yes, I did. I took that pen with these 3 fingers, and I stuck it into that socket. Now, I can't tell you what happened when I stuck it in the socket. I can't tell you what happened in my brain. I can't tell you what happened in my arm. My mother asked me when she came home if something ran up my arm. I can't tell her that. I have no idea. I don't know what happened. All I know is the lights went out, and then my aunt came in there with an ironing cord getting ready to beat all of her children because she didn't know what had happened. And they got a candle and lit it and saw that pin stuck in the socket. They went, oh. She said, who put that pin in the socket? Well, I wasn't saying anything, and nobody knew that I'd done it, so I was sitting there just looking innocent around like, I don't know. My aunt told her children she was going to line them all up and beat every one of them until somebody told who put that pin in that socket. My cousin that I loved dearly, that I was waiting to go outside to play with, said, I know who had that pin. Then she told on me. My cousin that I love dearly. But you know, she was the first in line getting ready to get a beating. I guess I would have told on me too. But I said all of that to say this. You know, they say a 110 socket back then would grab you and hold on to you. I don't know anything about that. All I know is for the next 5 or 6 months, I had the imprint of the pen on these three fingers. It was like that on these two, and then that this way on the thumb. So I had that on these three fingers of mine, there and there. I guess where I held it, and I had that for about 6 months. And I do believe, I don't know why that electricity, because now they fix the sockets where it'll grab you and throw you across the room someplace. Back then it would just hold on. But I do believe, that's why I say, if the Lord. So you can't tell me what the Lord cannot do, because I am a living proof of what he can do. Because my mother should have come home to a 7-year-old corpse that night. Yet, instead, standing in front of you, there's a woman who's 60-some odd years old standing in front of you. So I know what the Lord can do. So young people, if the Lord is for you, Romans 8:31, who or what can be against you? Nothing and nobody. If you don't remember anything else I've said, remember that. Stick a pin in that thought. But I imagine in my mind that I say 60-some odd years old, and I didn't black that out, but I will take that out later. But I want you to know that should have been a corpse, but I'm still standing here today. And that's why I take him everywhere I go. Because I know that if the Lord is for you, who or what can be against you? Now, I imagine that he told that electricity, back off. You can't have her. She's mine. I have plans for her. And all I know is the electricity went skipping on back. It took that pin and fused it to that socket, to that receptacle. And that electricity must have gone skipping on back down through apartments and blowing out, because they didn't have breaker boxes there. They had fuses, blowing out fuses and blowing up electrical sockets all down through the apartment building. But it didn't get to take Alma that day. So I know what the phrase, if the Lord. So when I tell you that I have a past with him, an intimate past with him, I do. And young people, God will. And he's listening. Hebrews 4, verse 16. Bring your problems, okay? Now, I had to say all of that as we were going through this, and I've covered that in this book in quite a few details. Chopping my row. And I can't really tell you very much about chopping my row, but I will tell you why I mentioned chopping. And when we were doing the cotton field, we had to be sure that you chop. There's a little vine called a morning glory. We had to make sure that we got all of the morning glories chopped down. You chop it right close to the soil line, and once you did that, you didn't have to worry about it choking the cotton out. So that was one of the vines that you had, one of the weeds you had to grow on the road. You know, if the Lord asked you to come in, he said, go into my vineyard and work. And then let's say if you had a road there to chop, maybe you had some morning glories on that. That would be like storms in your life. I liken the weeds on the road in a cotton field to the storms that Christians have in their lives, okay? So morning glory would be like a small storm. Then was another weed that grew up on the road called cuckabird. Oh, a cuckabird. You know those things with all those little stickers on it that will get in your hair and get in your clothes? Yes, but if you took care of it back when it was young and threw it on off in the middle of the road, you didn't have to worry about it anymore. So, you know, I'm just telling you, that's like a little bit bigger storm in your life. You know, I'm comparing chopping cotton to storms in a Christian's life, the problems you have in a Christian's life. And then